Good morning, it's Rabbi Kolakowski, the Koblenz Haruv, offering more answers on Quora.com. One of the questions that came up, I believe it was anonymous, was what are some of the challenges of keeping kosher in the modern world? Before we answer that, I have to say that probably today it's easier to keep kosher in many ways than it ever was because of the ubiquitous nature of not only kosher foods, but kosher certified foods, certainly throughout the United States, but even in many places of the world. Really, when there are challenges, the challenges come down to not kosher food per se, but first of all, kosher certified food, and second of all, certain stringencies that many communities have in regards to kosher foods. And many discussions about the different types of stringency. So, for example, I've joined more than half of my life ago Hasidic communities, and we have certain stringencies that other communities do not have. And so those would include things like only having dairy products where the milking was supervised by an observant Jewish person. So we would say would be under rabbinical supervision. Also, only eating baked products that were in some way baked, even peripherally, by an observant Jewish person. So again, that the baking would actually be under supervision and not only the ingredients lists. Now, it's a much older opinion, not even really an opinion, but really the actual law, is that commercially baked items, as long as we can ascertain that all of the ingredients are kosher, whereas privately baked items, even if all the ingredients are kosher, if they were baked by someone other than an observant Jew, would not be kosher if they're privately baked. When it comes to dairy products, it is the older law that milk itself, for sure, would have to be milked under the supervision of someone who is Jewish and observant. But some of the later milk products, like butter and so forth, would not need to be, because you could not make butter, etc., from animals that are not kosher, from the milk of those animals. However, again, in the Hasidic community, we are more strict about that. When it comes to making cheese, the general opinion, the general law was always that all types of hard cheeses had to be made by someone who is an observant Jew, not only even if all the ingredients are kosher, because quite often non-kosher ingredients are used as rennet. All of these things today are generally, especially in America, considered stringencies. The general classical American view is that all milk in America, since the government is supervising to make sure that it's only coming from a cow, that is sufficient that we know that it's coming from a cow, and that it's considered as if it is supervised, because our knowledge is that it is, and our trust that non-kosher milks, pig's milk and so forth, are not being included into the regular milk, are sufficient to render it kosher, and so too that's what's relied upon in other, the major kosher organizations like the OU and so forth. The biggest challenge to keeping kosher outside of a Jewish community is access to meat products. Even if kosher meats are available, they tend to be more expensive, particularly outside of a major Jewish community. And so if you're looking for meat and poultry, that's going to be the most difficult thing to obtain. On the other hand, you can purchase fish quite easily that usually has a kosher supervision on it. Prepared fish items, tuna fish and things, even though there are some issues with that in general, those issues are not really that important for various reasons. So in general today, the only major challenge is finding meat products that are kosher outside of a major Jewish community. Of course, now with the availability of meat substitutes in most stores, although those tend to be actually more expensive than kosher meats, but a lot of meat substitutes are available. So when you're traveling, when we're traveling in our family outside of major Orthodox communities, that's generally what we're going to do, is purchase some meat substitutes. That's something to have for lunch, or some fish items, so we'll have some protein for lunch if we didn't prepare anything to bring with us. And that's pretty much it. The same thing, you don't have the convenience outside of a Jewish community of going to a restaurant to buy something. But sometimes you go to certain communities and they might have a college campus that has a kosher meal plan option. And they actually allow people from the community in general to come in and purchase food. Or sometimes there might be a nursing home that might only serve kosher food, and they sell also to the community at large. When the lockdowns came in reaction to the virus that came out of Wuhan, China, a lot of those things became less available. So, if I was traveling in a community, I remember we were in one community traveling, visiting a little bit for work, but also we made a little mini family vacation out of it. And although we weren't able to sit down at the nursing home to eat, they did sell us food to eat, and it was actually quite good, and it was under a reliable kosher supervision. Another one, though, recently that I had called now, even though all these lockdowns are pretty much over for the most part, I had called them where I had sat down and eaten a number of years ago in another town, and they said, no, we don't do that anymore. That's done. So, these are the issues. Now, what about kosher items that are not supervised? Now, in the standard, both ultra-Orthodox and modern Orthodox world, we tend to be very strict, more than our ancestors were, about items that do not need supervision being supervised, generally because we don't know about certain ingredients, where they come from, what they are, and so we tend to be strict. But the actual law with a lot of these ingredients is that they would technically be nullified because they don't impart any flavor. They're such a minuscule amount. And when it comes to those things, there are several websites that are made by the family and students of Rabbi Yitzchak Abadi Shlita, who is a very major Sephardic posek. Even though he's controversial, he knows what he's talking about. And he's correct. Now, we're allowed to be strict above and beyond the letter of law, and we should recognize that. But if you want to know which items, if you want to rely on such a thing, and for me, choosing not to rely on those things is more of a cultural thing than a religious thing. It's the way I would express myself, identifying culturally with the Hasidic communities. And so therefore, although I know, one of my teachers who is a strong Breslover Chassid, but he doesn't culturally identify as much with the Hasidic communities because he considers that to be folklore and not actual halacha. And he's correct. He is correct. But nonetheless, it's hard for me to get out of habits that I've developed over the years. Even today I'm wearing a flannel shirt, which I believe belonged to my grandfather, instead of a white shirt with my bekisha and my hat and everything. Going to work today, working in a non-Jewish environment, and that's another example of a challenge. Where I work, they provide food for the workers to eat. That's part of the deal of working there. And a lot of people choose not to eat the food because it's not really the best food. I religiously am not able to eat that food that is available to me for free. So I go, and not only that, but because of the nature of the place where I work, I'm a prison chaplain. I cannot bring food inside the institution with me, so I go out to my car to eat a peanut butter sandwich that my wife lovingly prepared for me, as opposed to, or some other delicacy, so I can eat something that's kosher, and according to the stringencies that we keep in our home of eating only breads that were baked under those conditions, which we buy from Jewish stores, or sometimes in certain non-Jewish stores also sell them if there's a big Jewish community, and other aspects that are related to that. And so, and also that the bread is made with apple juice, in order for it not to actually be considered bread, but rather cake, which if it was bread, I would need to wash my hands with a cup before eating it, according to Jewish law. But if it's made with apple juice or some other juice, it's considered to be a pastry rather than a bread, and therefore the blessing is different, and the requirement to have ritual hand washing is different. Of course, we still wash our hands and eat, but I don't have to. Especially if I'm going out to eat in my car, it's rather difficult to have that ritual hand washing. Sometimes, inside the prison, I do have some boxes of matzah or something, so I can do the ritual hand washing, and nonetheless, I still have to fumble with keys and things like that to go to where the sink is, because the sink is not right near me. So there's a lot of these things to consider, but nonetheless, these are more or less, a lot of people might look at them as minor inconveniences. To me, they are totally normal. It's the way that I'm used to. I don't think about it. I know my wife likes to watch some of these videos where people talk about, what do I eat as a vegan, or is this or that. And to me, I don't really obsess over those types of things. I just, it's not really even so much on my radar, because I'm used to living this. Maybe I have to be more mindful. But my lifestyle of eating kosher and eating with the strict stringencies of the Hasidic communities, it just doesn't really affect me that much. Of course, sure, it would be a lot easier to go and eat at at McDonald's or something. Because that's everywhere, and it's cheap. But it's not necessarily, it doesn't even cross my mind to even think to do something like that. It's been a long time, that I've been living this lifestyle, most of my life, more than half of my life. I'm 38 years old, and I've been keeping kosher since I'm at least 13, 14 years old. So, these are, so well more than 25 years, 24, 25 years, I've been keeping kosher, and keeping the strict type of kosher for more than 20 years. So, and it just doesn't strike me as a challenge. When I was younger, when I didn't always keep kosher, growing up as I did, we kept kosher for Passover, and generally that wasn't an issue. But I remember one year, I had somewhat of a struggle with that, and actually my father wasn't Jewish. My mother is Jewish, and it was my father who made sure that I was keeping Passover properly, and so it should be a merit on his soul that he helped me through that struggle. So, I'll tell you again about this traveling. So, again, a lot of these issues have to do with the economics of where you travel and where you go. So, we were in one town, and we were my wife and children, and we had called the nursing home that I went to once, and they said, no, we don't do that anymore for a few years now. And we called the college that I had heard has all the strict levels of kosher in another town, a half hour in the other direction, and they didn't pick up the phone. So I didn't know if they were off on vacation or if they wasn't available. And again, I heard during the lockdowns it was not open to the public, but then later it was. So with these various issues going on, this is how these are the struggles. So what did we wind up doing? We went to the grocery store, and we, like I said, we got some soy hot dogs or whatever, meat substitutes that were certified kosher, vegan. They didn't have any bugs in it or anything like that. And I think maybe some packages of fish. It's a little bit harder to eat. And some, regular things that are generally kosher, bags of chips, beverages, and things like that. I think, the big challenge right now, it's not only with kosher food, but with food in general, is the cost of food has gone up considerably. I have a lot to say about that, but I'd rather not get into politics. But nonetheless, that's what we're really, it's not even an issue about kosher food, but just food in general. Thank you for watching. God bless. Please like, share, and subscribe, comment, and we hope to see you soon. Be well. Press the bell button, too, if you made it this far.